I'm the program chair at Division 39 right now, and it's been such a pleasure to be at the APA convention. And I'm happy to introduce our two speakers today. Mike Boyce received his BA from Connecticut College in 1991 and his MSW from Smith College for social work in 1994. He has over 25 years of experience counseling adults and families. He started working in public school and clinical settings to advance the access of students with different abilities and learning challenges. He quickly identified the crucial role of emerging technologies for equity and health. His work includes treating patients who use video games from a gamer-affirmative stance, and his theoretical background combines psychodynamic theory, contemporary cognitive, and learning theory with cutting-edge technologies. He's currently a teaching associate in psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, where he supervises interns and clinicians. He also served on the Massachusetts Commission for LGBTQ Youth. Mike serves as a resource on digital literacy and social justice issues such as dismantling racism, LGBTQIA awareness and safety, disability awareness, cultural awareness, and non-traditional families. He was appointed to the Massachusetts Commission for LGBT Youth and serves in an advisory capacity to the NASW on issues including youth suicide prevention. He's also the author of Reset, Video Games and Psychotherapy. And Patricia Tichinetto Clough, PhD, LC, is former professor of sociology and media studies at the Graduate Center CUNY. She is a member of the training committee and chairs the curriculum committee at the Institute for Contemporary Psychotherapy. She's faculty teaching candidates at Psychoanalytic Institute's ICP, NIP, and NYU postdoc. Clough is author of several publications on psychoanalysis, digital media technologies, and datification, along with the recent User Unconscious Affect Media Measure, the affective turn and auto-affection, unconscious thought in the age of teletechnology. Clough has published Bringing the Social, Bringing the Noise, in studio practice and psychoanalytic dialogues. Clough's in private practice in New York City. I'll turn it over to them.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear us okay? You're okay? Thanks. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're trying to share a mic between the two of us, so we'll see how that goes. We may just, when we go back and forth, just...
Yeah, if anything's not working, let us know.
Yes. So we got an introduction, which was a surprise, but one of the things I thought we could start with is basically giving you a little bit of our introducing ourselves, in specifically regards to why we're interested in technology, what we think it has to do with things ranging from race, class, colonialism, and other stuff. And this is going to be in the form of a dialogue. So Patricia and I are planning on chatting. This is all going to be embryonic and open-ended. If you're expecting one takeaway, this is not the place for you. We're going to kind of explore, and our goal is for about the first, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, we're going to chat, and then when there's kind of a good time, we're going to invite you to kind of come into the conversation. So think of it as like a living room dialogue.
Right. Oh, you want me to start?
Why don't you start?
Well, let me just say that I'm doubly or triply displaced, having been a professor in media studies for a long time, and then a psychoanalyst, talking about technology to psychoanalysts. And then here, it's been a long time since I've been at American Psychological Association. I might have been 20. And so, so I'm a little nervous about what translates from what I'm thinking about to psychologists. But those of you working psychodynamically, maybe it'll make sense. Because I'm a sociologist, shall I just say what I'm thinking? I'm going to start by saying the literature in psychoanalysis, that's why I said what I said, because it might be different in psychology as I'm feeling it around, has, if ignoring technology completely, has finally started to think about technology. And when they started to think about technology, they focused, as maybe psychologists do too, on the effects of certain technologies on the individual. So typically teenagers coming up then with, perverse, addictive, something really almost always bad. It's very hard to get social scientists in general, I think this is crazy to say, but it's totally true, to think that you cannot talk about the social, let's start there, without talking about technology. It's unfortunate because of the way technology is being used today in governance and economy. We're much more, and ChatGPT, we're much more aware of the intersection of the social and technology, but it's been that way forever, at least for those of us who have been thinking in what we call Western thought, industrial capitalism, can think about issues you mentioned like colonialism, racism, issues of class, without seeing the intersection of the social and technology. Always there at the heart of different developments in the social world has been technology. I would think at the moment we are going through a tremendous social transformation. I'm going to say what I mean and then you, then you. Social transformation. We're having a huge transformation in capitalism. From, I want to think of how much we might all know. We no longer probably should be using the word neoliberalism, which is one that many of us have used to refer to capitalism among us, because more and more capitalism is becoming what's being called patrimonial, like private ownership of great wealth. Elon Musk, the president himself of the United States of America, where it's really private equity, controlled by one individual. That's very unusual for capital, except once it was like that. It's returning. The other, of course, great transformation is in governance. We can say many things, but we probably should say authoritarian with fascist leanings. You okay? Yeah. Yep. Put those two things together, a really transformation of economy, where those people of the individual wealth are also kind of running the government. We have a really difficult and maybe horrific, I suppose it is horrific, social transformation ongoing. To not understand that when we talk about technology, we should be knowing what that intersection of governance and economy is to really miss the point. Here is the point. Given that, we should understand that digital technologies, all of them, are forming the infrastructure of our everyday life. There is no outside of digital media technologies for any of us. There's never been an outside of technology, actually, but I think we can feel more when I say that our lives, our work, our interpersonal relationships are profoundly embedded in that technology. So I think it's more a matter right now to understand what that means more than ChatGPT is taking over the human race, which, okay.
Okay, so that was a great start, that primed the pump. So I think I want to give you a few concepts we're probably going to be talking about today. And one of them that I think Patricia was just leading up to was that we are in a period of time where AI, as a form of technology, for example, is extremely opaque. Now, what do I mean by that? So technology tends to either be transparent or opaque. It is transparent when we have been using it for so long that you aren't aware that right now you are all utilizing this magnificent technology which amplifies your posture called the chair. Chairs are technology. We don't notice them, they're transparent. When we are learning a new technology, it is opaque. And we see it in a way that can cause affect, fear of video game addiction, fear of AI. I want to give you an example of a technology that I think you may be aware of, and then hopefully it's going to thread back to what Patricia was saying. We are going to be talking politics here. If you weren't coming for politics, then you came to the wrong place. But
Stay anyway.
Stay anyway. Many of you may be familiar with the technology called the book. It is a technology that most of us are acquainted with. We don't think of it as a technology. No one asks, gee, do you have a reading addiction? Have you read 5 hours tonight? They don't use that sort of approach to technology of a transparent item like a book. So how this relates to my getting into psychoanalytic and psychodynamic therapy was when I was in high school, I stole a book. I was in a bookstore, and I was looking in the index, and the book had in the index the word bisexual. I was so excited. I'd never seen that word before, and I was so afraid that I would never have access to that again, so I stole the book. And that is, in part, what we're talking about when we talk about the Promethean impulse. That for those, let me just tell them the Prometheus and we'll go. So Prometheus, so you guys might know about Prometheus. Prometheus was this titan who had a brother, and his brother, Epimetheus, asked him when all the gods were kind of getting all the beings on the planet in order, Epimetheus said to his brother, can I give everybody equality? Because that was their job. And Prometheus said, sure. And so, equality. So like Epimetheus gave claws to tigers, and rabbits got really fast speed in there, and Epimetheus gave everybody equality and ran out and forgot that humans hadn't gotten equality yet. And so that's the part of the story we tend to forget, that when it came time for Prometheus to help with the humans, what he did was he said, oh, well, we're going to give humans the ability to develop skills, and to do that, we're going to steal fire from the gods. And so Prometheus stole fire and gave it to mankind. The gods got really mad. They tied Prometheus up. An eagle comes every day to rip out his liver and comes back again. What on earth are the Greeks talking about? And how does this relate to books? The way it relates to books is the Promethean impulse is already an acceptance of the status quo, which is that someone else owns the knowledge and that you have to steal it. And that in order, if you see your identity in a book, you're going to need to take it. And one of the things that we have noticed in our work with technology and how it connects to capitalism is that in colonialism, is that in colonialism, the good has already always happened somewhere else. Someone else had Christianity and they're going to bring it to you. Someone else has the right color skin and they're going to tell you how to behave. That is where theft comes in. Because prior to the idea of theft, you have to have somebody setting the scene saying, well, this is ours. This is ours. And if you take it, whether it be power or an idea, then it's then you stole it. And that's where some of the groundwork I want us to be thinking about when we start to talk about technology. And I could go on about originary technicity, but I don't know if you want to.
I will.
Go ahead.
I have I want, so you know this is happening right in front of you, so give me a minute. Originary technicity, that's the word. One of the things that Mike was suggesting there is the notion of coloniality or race or some of the social political issues we've been dealing with have usually been exteriorized, excluded in modern Western thought. So I think most of us now know that when we use the word human as if it's everyone, it wasn't. It referred to man, to white, to possessing consciousness. It's been, all the other things have been exteriorized from that central figure. And that's true of technology as well. Since modern Western thought, we've talked about the human as not a technological being, but technology's also been excluded in the discourse all the way up into Heidegger, trying to figure out how should we talk about technology. And so that also leads to who possesses it, who can steal it, who has the right to understand it, etc. And so it turns out that psychologists and psych sciences have played a huge role in defining the relationship of technology to the human, assuming technology is outside of the human, not already part of it, through children and through the effect of technology on the psychology of children, which has been the history, which has made it harder to make us understand where I started, for instance, today, and you went on from, that it really is central to how we're governed, central to our economy, central to our everyday lives, not simply a tool that affects a child. When you talk about a tool affecting a child, you're usually talking about how to sustain development of individualism. And we're at a moment when we really need to really think about human centrism and human privilege. We understand that we need to understand better about the environment, about animal, about plant life. It's interesting to be talking about that and not what you might expect about technology, but moving away from the human as centered also is about understanding technology more broadly, instead of just in terms of psychic goodies and baddies. I am going to get to the individual and psychic stuff, but it's really important to have this broader perspective. Mind, political, economic. Mike was talking and leading to what I was just talking about too, is epistemology and ontology, how we know what's true and how that's related to technology. We also, and then I'm going to stop, we also have a technology right now, that people are a little crazy about because it's a technology of cognition. It's not movies, which is also a technology of cognition, but we didn't think of it that way, or television. It looks like it's replacing human thinking, which it is not, by the way, but it is an incredible form of thinking that digital technology has actually brought about. And so that makes us very nervous about it, actually. But it does also make us realize that it does raise questions about epistemology and ontology that technology always has raised. We have unique ones with this technology about truth and causality. I love to talk about that. Before we do, you see, we could talk about that technology affecting that, but think of what governance is doing to truth and causality. Oh my God. And what political economy has always done to truth and technology. So it's just another version of trying to think that way.
That's great. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a case. We're going to balance back and forth. I was worried I was going to be the more political one, and I think Patricia's doing a great job with that. You're doing great with that. So I want to tell you about a trans patient of mine. This is a trans woman. She's a young woman that I've been seeing for a couple of years now, and she has been working with me through her transitioning and her coming out process. And about a year ago now, when TikTok, remember the TikTok ban? Our government decided we were going to ban TikTok. Well, she was really concerned about that. And I always talk with my patients about technology. I think, Patricia, you're going to get into this in a second. But I was saying, how are you feeling about the TikTok ban? And she was talking about the idea of losing a community. And I thought that was where it was going to end, until I sort of said to her, yeah, I imagine that you found TikTok very mirroring of your trans identity. And she said, more than that, the algorithm knew I was trans before I did. The algorithm was referring trans talk stuff. And a naive therapeutic approach would be to say, oh, See, TikTok radicalized this cisgender person into a trans person. But I think this is getting at the ontology that Patricia's talking about, which is we are always in relation with technology, and technology is in relationship with us, and technology helps us see who we are for the first time, and then
Has been doing that.
and has been doing it. So guess what? This will be I'm going to tell my foot story and then I'll stop. But so we like to think in psychology that the brain is the most important part of our human being, but it turns out that it was the feet. Because once your feet develop so that you can walk erect as a hominid, your hands don't need to be feet anymore. So your hands can do things like make tools. And then you have a cup, now transparent technology, but now you can carry and retain water. Yeah. Now you can carry and retain knowledge, whether it be a cave painting or literature or a smartphone. And that then allows you to read and pass on to future tribes knowledge and changes your neurology so that now you're sitting here at APA thinking that your brain is the most important part of your body. But it was always a relationship between you and the cup and the book and the smartphone and algorithms making your gender revealed to you.
So interesting. Yeah. Okay. How are you doing? Yeah, okay. Because we're jumping around.
We are jumping.
I love it. Okay, so this was the one thing that I'm actually... So what you were saying, I'm going to say this, and I think it goes back, something I've been thinking about. It's not my own thought. It's Olga Goranova's thoughts. And it's the digital subject. So I've been really very interested for many, many years in trying to understand how to think of everything we're talking about in terms of subjectivity. And so I just want to read just a little so you can understand it. And then I want to get back to your patient. And the example, which is brilliant. The digital subject is a new form of subject construction that arises out of computational procedures and are employed by various forms of power to distinguish, map, capture not only subjectivities but also non-humans, physical things that inhabit the world. Digital subjects are not human, although they bring together users of digital media technologies and big data analytics in a way that entangles the physical, legal, sensual, and cultural elements. A production of, and listen to this, values dynamically reinstantiated correlations, rules, models, shreds of actions, identities, interests, and engagements, which are put into relationship with each other, disaggregated, categorized, classified, clustered, modeled, projected onto, speculated upon, and made predictions about. It's just what you all know as the algorithm that tells you which book you would like to read next, given what you've already read. That makes you feel that it has your data and that it's telling you something from your data. But the digital subject is not just your data. It can be narrowed down because, they can do anything with it. It's many, many things making up a data set. That's why that data set knew that your patient was trans before.
Right.
They actually did not know your patient.
Right.
They knew all these variables and uses that point to things. My new feeling is that working with patients requires us trying to work with them in the space between them and these kind of subjects. You're going like that, which freaks me out. It's so great. Because it's one way to help patients really see that's where we live. When I was saying before that we're the infrastructure of our lives, this brings it closer to each individual. I don't know what treating that is, but it's like asking the patient and you to really face the world they live in, not the world we tell them they have to inhabit when they're working with us, about their mothers, about their fathers, but really their everyday world. I think it's really important that patients bring in their everyday world.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about video games now, because one of the areas that I specialize in is working with patients who game. And often they come to me after...
Don't they all?
Well, it used to be an outlier, right? Because
Yes.
people used to not think that video games counted if they were on your phone or if it was Smashwords or whatever. But I used to get, and I still get, referrals from people that have maybe gone to a video game detox or been through a number of therapists who over and over do the same thing, which is say to them, how many hours a week are you playing? Okay, the minute you throw that into the intersubjective field first, you've cued me that I am not in a good place. I'm not safe to tell you anything. And so they would come to me expecting I was going to say, you know, how many hours a week do you play? And my first question was, what are you playing? Believe it or not, the therapist that they had come from
Didn't ask
had never asked them what they would play.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between Stardew Valley and Elden Ring and Skyrim. And just like the sorts of book technology that we all are interested in is variety, and it tells us something about ourselves. Just like we all are having different dreams at night, although there may be similar themes, games were different objects for different people. Yeah. And so that's how I got interested in that, is what the associations were, what the links were. Now, why am I telling you this? Because that is the everydayness of some of my patients.
Yeah.
I have a couple, and then I'll give it back to you. I have a couple that started seeing me for couples therapy, and they waited like 6 months before they confessed to me they played World of Warcraft together. And I wish they'd said something earlier, because once they started talking about that, we were off to the races. She always got into fights with him. She was always starting arguments with words. And, by the way, she was a mage in World of Warcraft, and she liked to hurl fireballs. Okay?
Of course.
Right? She also got in trouble when she raided. For those of you who may or may not have played World of Warcraft, if you throw fireballs too soon before your tank has gotten the aggro or the attention of the boss, the monster will come and get you. And why this is important is because as we got on to hearing about her family of origin, when she was younger, she was a domestic violence survivor. She and her sister were abused by her father. And she was the older sister. And she learned when her father was getting ready to be violent to say something,
threw the thing.
hurl a fireball,
Yeah.
get the aggro. Dad comes and beats me up and then has discharged, and sister is safe. Okay? None of this gets unearthed unless we do, let me talk about entanglement. You can talk about it. None of this gets unearthed until we experience the entanglement of child, parent, adult, couple, fireballs, violence, insults, technology. If we didn't ask about video games and all we knew was 3 hours, these people would never have encountered themselves.
I wanted to say that I just came because I thought while I was here I should get a CE credit. So I just went to this very intensely populated session on using digital technologies. Were you there? For children, right? And someone was speaking about producing a game, an online game like you were just talking about. I think for incarcerated youth, if I had understood it. And it was about regulating affect through controlling breathing. And by playing the game through, I guess it's controlling breathing, you win. And I was thinking of my grandchildren, 15 and 13, and I thought, did anyone ever ask or look at how children do that themselves by playing games like that. I don't know that we had to create them. It was very interesting, and I'm certainly not putting it down, but all I could think of was watching my granddaughter. I'm sure when things were bothering her, she would just go and play her game.
Right.
And children play all the time. So that we don't see our patients as children who play games or even adults who play games.
Right.
We're missing something. And so it'll take some creativity to figure out how to work with people and their technologies, because it's not what we usually do. And again, I'm a psychoanalyst, so maybe you do. I'm going on.
Going on?
Because I'm going to end up my part here so that everyone will talk about them. The digital subject is part of the ongoing measuring and monetizing of individuals' moods, habits, cravings, and dispositions, circulated as data belonging to anyone or no one, nonetheless urging individuals continuously to engage in online self-curation and self-surveillance. An individual can be targeted even though the digital subject is not in a one-to-one correspondence with the individual, object, location, or mechanism of data transmitted. More accurately, digital subjects put individuals in a relationship of singularity and multiplicity, where singularity occurs through constant aggregation, comparison, sorting, and rearrangement of other singularities, data points referring sometimes to no one, but a probable someone fitting or filling out a profile. Now, this is a little, maybe say, a darker side of what we're talking about, because there are darker sides,
Yep.
right? And for the individual, but all the more reason to help patients recognize their relationship to the digital subject, that it is making us very aware of self-curating ourselves online and lots of worries about what that means. But before we start worrying about it's causing this and causing that, we need to recognize that it's everyone. Everyone is sort of in this relationship with digital technology. And so we need more to talk about the normal uses of it and what it means to our patients and ourselves before we look at, the addiction, the blah, 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 blah. And usually that's not an issue when you really discuss it more widely with patients.
Yep.
Okay. But of course, that is a feature of capitalism that, exploits this technology that could be, even better than what it is.
Okay, so that was dark, and I don't disagree with it, but I want to offer
Fire.
I want to offer you the light at the end of the tunnel with a little metaphor and some history about trains. Okay, so trains originally could only go so fast and so far on iron rails. They were limited by the technology of the time until there were sociopolitical constraints on certain nations, for example, France, and they were not able to have enough iron. And that necessitated them inventing a way of making steel rails. And steel rails actually allowed trains to go larger, faster. Why am I telling you this? Because there is this constant dynamic, especially if we're still stuck in the human technology kind of opposition. Every single technological advance is changing us. And when we get changed, we then utilize a new technology. Hey, I've got hands. I think I'll make a cup. Now I've got a cup. Now I'm not going to worry about water in the same way. Now we're at a point in history where AI is unnerving. Yeah. People can't be sure of what the truth is. And you are now encountering this technology in a way that is going to change your consciousness and your relational stance. Have you noticed that you don't believe everything you see? Have you noticed that you're wondering if something is generative AI? That is you recalibrating your brain and your relationship to technology. It's not bad, you're not good. It's not good, you're not bad. you are in a constant dynamic. And when you come up with a new way of looking at all of these algorithms, we're going to create new technology. And the last sort of thought I'm going to throw out before maybe we can open it.
Yeah.
The last thought is, behind the scenes of all of the angst I've seen when I talk to colleagues in psychoanalysis and psychotherapy about this is, well, we're going to be replaced by chatbots. And it's not because necessarily people worry about being replaced, it's a capitalist worry. We're worried we're not going to be able to pay our bills. But what if the next stage in technological human relationship backfires on capitalism and actually starts to change capitalism? You may have thought I was crazy to say that, but 20 years ago, if I said universal basic income, you wouldn't have known what I said. 3 years ago, if you were under student loans that had not been recalibrated, the Biden administration calculated your years and your loan was wiped out. Those are examples of how technology can actually disrupt capitalism. So again, this is a cyclical relationship. We need to be skeptical but not fear-based, and we need to be prepared for what our next action is. And I think with that, we're going to sort of turn it over to you. I
think we should, because we have lots more to say, but it'd be better to hear from you, and then in case we're missing what's on your minds.
Yeah. Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
So I really enjoyed your dialogue.
Loud.
Loud, please.
I really enjoyed your dialogue. And what I appreciated about it most is that it's coming from a place of healing people and knowing people, as opposed to how can we leverage technology to make more money,
Yep.
to be more efficient,
Yep.
see more patients.
Yep.
And
Oh,
it's refreshing,
oh.
so thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I don't even think like that. I
Well-
just realized, I'm sorry.
Well, there's a lot of
See more, of course, see more
Right.
patients, that's true, yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And exactly, you walk through the exhibit hall and there are so many apps, right? And I often used to get people saying, well, what video games do you recommend? Do you do serious games? Do you do this? And I was like, no, serious games aren't fun. My apologies if anyone is in the serious games industry, but I want games that have a critical mass of players for social enjoyment and a critical mass of art and creativity, with the understanding that that will inevitably get co-opted by capitalism, but then we get the indie games, right? We wouldn't have
it's
indie
always-
games if we hadn't had that. It's that sort of dialectic, right? Go ahead in the back.
I was wondering if you could elaborate on the idea of, at some points I think you referred to it as talking about the everyday, and then at some points I think that's what you called the subjective self or the digital self. But I was just wondering if we could talk more about what that actually looks like in a therapy session. Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you, did you hear it?
She wants you to talk more about the digital self and how it shows up in therapy. Is that?
How do you have real conversations? Like, in your case, you know these, it sounds like you know these games inside and out, so it's easy for you to talk with your patients about them, but you don't really know the ins and outs of the technology that.
Oh.
How do you?
A quick prologue then to you. I don't know all these games because what I do is I commit to playing whatever game my patient is playing. Because if they've had to be committing to the educational industrial complex where they go to school and feel incompetent 8 hours a day, I can take a half an hour and learn how to play a video game and feel incompetent. So I was bumping into trees in Minecraft. No one told me that if you punched them, you could actually make a crafting table. I was like a moron. So what I do when I talk with people about this is engage with the technology. Don't assume that someone else knows it. Okay, go and play it and notice the internal resistances. That's how I do it. What do you do with the digital self?
Well, you asked a really interesting question, because I'm, asking all of us to think more about it. In psychoanalysis, I don't know if it's true for all of you and how you practice, the line is you're supposed to follow the patient. You don't bring anything in that they're not bringing in. And I think there's some subjects that are going to require that, you might not say, okay, today, before you say anything, I'm going to tell you about the digital subject. But you might sort of raise things, intervene in certain ways when you hear something that they're saying that this might help. But I think it's going to mean rethinking what we talk about. There's so much we don't talk about with our patients because we follow them. We don't even talk about, a lot of times, where they come from, or I don't mean where they come from with their parents, but where they live and some of the structures around them. So here's another one, though, that I'm trying to think a lot about. So like many of us, I assume, and I realize this is what you mean by using technology for more patients. We're on Zoom with our patients or, online. I have work with some very high-powered young people who are making a lot of money and are very like CEOs of startups. And they get online with me, and I'll just give you one example. I get on, she gets on, and she goes, wait a minute, and finishes a phone call while I'm waiting for her. I'm always afraid I'm going to get thrown out of the industry by saying, and I've started to let the patients who are looking at their phone, who are looking up with their eyes at something, we all know that it's happening, to engage them in associations to that, like you do with the game. To let that be part of the reality. It's kind of tricky, but I have found it to be quite moving because it engages them in the way they're living their temporality. The way this technology is transforming, not just the way we think, but our bodies. And that I thought too with your patient. The rhythm and breathing and spacing of our bodies, because we're with it all the time, all of us. So it engages their relationship to work, to technology, and a lot of our patients are working with technology as well. They're also on the computer, and there they are, that computer framing how they make their money, how they work, how they interact with it, and me. And I'm trying to be part of their world. And I haven't lost the sense of what we like to say, going deep, which I resent that term, actually. But, whatever we think is the right thing to be doing in psychoanalysis, that's there too.
So in that example where a woman tells you 1 minute, and then what do you do with that?
Sometimes I do nothing with it. It's like everything else about the art of how we work. And then other times I talk about it. I never do, like you don't do, how many hours?
How many hours?
I never do. Could you please not do that? Which I know therapists think they should, and maybe that's what people think I should. But more maybe talk somewhere in that session about when they talk about being overwhelmed or how does that fit with your daily life? Just to explore it with them. And then to be aware of the impact. So that same patient feels like she doesn't have a choice in terms of how much time she spends at work, which includes the technology. She also has some disorganized eating. And she spends a lot of time thinking about food. And that doesn't feel to her to be very productive either. And so I like talking about all these temporalities with her. And so, you let it add up. Mm-hmm. And I suppose it's like listening to their lives in terms of rhythms, rhythms of the body.
And if I can just add
we don't have much help from anything we read about how to work like this. So we're at the beginning of figuring stuff out together.
Thank you for just kind of grounding it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So one thing that I can sort of add is sort of an internal experience I've had with several patients, especially in the past I'd say 3 years, is sometimes I'll be talking back and forth with them and I'll feel like we're in a podcast. I feel like it's a Twitch stream or a webinar. And I start to get worried. I'm like, does this mean I'm not doing therapy? And what I've learned is to resist the urge to be productive. I am no longer concerned with being
Getting
productive.
somewhere, yeah.
I am not concerned with patients being productive. I don't care if patients have a job. I have one patient whose family hates me because they want him to go back to a school and finish his degree. And I'm like, well, if you want to. And they're like, you should be getting him to be productive. And I'm like, just because I stepped on the treadmill of capitalism and I'm exploiting your income as you are on the treadmill of capitalism does not mean that I have to be an agent of capitalism. Right. And so I'm not concerned with people being productive, and that includes me. And the reason I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to end this point, is therapists have a many therapists, many of our colleagues have a deep and almost visceral fear of feeling excitement or joy in a session. And so when they start to feel like they're playful or there's a repartee, there's almost this inner grad school educator. It's like, you're going to have sex with your patient. You're feeling excited. You're going to have sex with your patient. It's like, no, if it feels like a podcast or a Twitch stream, maybe that's important and meaningful, but it doesn't have to be productive. It's not about good or bad.
Yeah, I was a little like, what? To what you said about, because there's it's really amazing, two related productive. We have an idea of getting somewhere with our patients, getting them healthy or something, like it's often really embarrassing when, you think, I don't know what healthy means, but, getting them healthy, getting them better. Patients come and they are in pain and they may be suffering. And we would like to not have that continue. And I don't think the way to go to get them to suffer less is by making them productive or making the work we do with them work productive. And that's why, I was saying living in the rhythm and time, I think also puts you in a place eventually to relieve pain and suffering. But it can't just be a goal. It's an incredibly, you mentioned efficiency. Technology is often captured by power to be more efficient, to make us work more. That's why it's so fun to use it to play and to communicate, as we also do. So we should not be in that same mode. We should think maybe also, of being very playful. Oftentimes people that are suffering have real restrictions on being able to play that are very, very real. And you have this little time with them that you could play.
Yeah.
As Winnicott taught us to do.
Yes, and Winnicott said, our goal is to play with the patient, and if our patient can't play, our goal is to help the patient get ready to play. A quick playful story with someone who is suffering, and then next question. So when I announced our lineup for Division 39, which included our talk, which was going to include talk on colonialism, one of our colleagues emailed me and said, any talk that includes the topic of colonialism is bullshit. Fortunately, using technology and play, I can email back to him nothing but the link to David Tycho's book, Triggers. Because here's someone who's suffering. Here's someone who needs something. And I'm going to play with them, but I'm not going to engage in that sort of limbic way. And that technology has got us in that fast limbic pace. Everybody's either an enemy or an ally. There's no room. Other thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about entanglement and its relation to subjective self and the digital self. I think we were talking a bit about the images of the fireball, the insults, and it's this red line that is kind of connecting the constellation. Am I getting entanglement right in that sense?
We'll let her talk on. She does a great job.
I don't know. What do you mean by, you're going to tell me? What do you mean by entanglement? He thinks I know what you mean.
That was something that came up during the conversation as a connecting point between the the subjective self, that like we're entangled with.
Oh,
the digital
technology,
self.
yeah. You know, entanglement's also a physicist term. So Karen Barad's work, I don't know if you know it, about that we're just entangled with everything. And, you know, there is, we were talking this morning, there is a moment in every new technology that people imagine the most positive effects of it. Usually towards something like democracy, because digital technology has so-called democratized a lot of things that were hierarchically structured. Capitalism goes as fast as all the good thinking and thinks of. I remember initially thinking, I wonder how they're going to make money out of this, because a lot of it was just freebie stuff happening online. It was fabulous. Of course, they found ways to do it, and they always do. Entanglement maybe is to understand the end of oppositions. And so when we remove human centrism, we get to see our interconnection with everything. And there's something about the network that looked like it had a vision of that kind of huge connectivity. And it's still part of that vision. It's not being realized that way, but it can be. So I don't know. Is that what? So yes, every part of us is entangled with every other aspect of the universe.
Yeah, and technology sort of helps kind of reveal and obscure that. And I guess a way I would sort of kind of piggyback on what you were saying is, we talk about technology as being really good and democratic. We talk about it being really evil and scary. Both of those are examples of opacity, opaque technology.
Yes, yeah.
We're noticing the technology, and it could be like a good object or a bad object. We're in that sort of paranoid schizoid position. And I want to get us into the depressive stance. All right? I want to get us into the stance where we can go, oh my God, gender. Like, we get on our feet, and then we can use our hands, and then we can write, and now we have language. And some languages in European traditions have masculine pronouns, masculine, feminine. Like, now we've got pronouns because that's a technology. And suddenly we're dealing with technology having created gender, right? And so then, many, many years ago, I didn't think I was going to talk, I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about pegging, but I think I'm going to be talking about pegging. We have technology that the human can amplify or alter their gender and sex expectations, whether it be dildos or binding or surgeries. And that's why everyone is so scared of technology and scared of trans stuff, because it destabilizes this idea that we have a fixed thing. And suddenly we're back on our feet, kind of with hands and not quite sure what's going on. Things have become opaque again. Gender is no longer transparent. It is opaque. And that means it's scary.
Again. That's really interesting. Just to add to that we often think of digital technology as affecting our minds, but it's actually very related to our bodies because of the speeds, but also of bringing to us the manipulation of things we thought were non-manipulatable, natural.
Yep.
So, we're either natural or technological, but if we don't have those oppositions, nature has always been a techne, always been a technique. And so technology and nature are entangled and have been always.
Yeah. And I think it's important to really kind of realize the idea that technology isn't always about tangible equipment. When I said pronouns, I mean it. Like, if you don't want to mispronounce someone, don't talk about them when they're not there. That's the easiest way to not mispronounce someone. There's something about separating out someone as an object that happens whenever we engage with technology at a little bit of a distance. And how to sort of, I'm not going to be able to articulate this well, but how to unlearn that or keep in double consciousness that we are always entangled.
Well, that's what we're trying to understand more with our patients.
Right. I mean, so if this is being confusing for you, that's good.
Oh, no, we've been really clear.
Because the idea of being sort of playful and leaving open spaces to think about, all of these different things. I guess I want to throw it back to you because we still have a few minutes. Are there questions or associations or links that you came up with in the course of this? Yep.
Right before, I was reading an article about how people don't like the personality of the new ChatGPT version. And one of the things that resonated with me and what I thought of is we're talking more about parasocial relationships. And this can be a way of thinking about how we can maybe think more deeply about those in general. What happens when all of a sudden so many people are concerned about the personality of a large language model?
The one.
The large language model.
Intimate enough relationship where they care about that. And this is true in gaming as well. Like character creation is one of the huge draws of that for many different people who are involved.
Yeah.
So thinking about how we create, cultivate, and nurture relationships that often we recognize are with non-human objects or entities is crucial to how we live our lives.
Right.
What?
So let me see if I can answer part of it. We're talking about parasocial relationships like chatbots.
Yeah.
And I think my answer would be, I think if people were less stigmatized and less ashamed to talk about parasocial relationships, we would all hear about each other's parasocial relationships, and we wouldn't just be thinking about the one kid that fell in love with a chatbot and suicided.
Absolutely.
That's the N of one. All of us are having conversations with ChatGPT or whatever ones. You know you are, and some of us, like Freud with Fleiss and self-analysis, write in letters and say, analyze this using object relations theory. And I got some analysis that really surprised me, and it was really right on target. And I was already open to that. It wasn't that this was an other that gave me something. I was already always receptive. And so that to me is, I think, where I would encourage us, is to always be already receptive.
You know, it made me, our whole session has made me think what I was saying about the digital subject. Of course, ChatGPT is able to do what it's doing because of all the information we give, that we are constantly letting off information every time we touch the keyboard. And so it has an enormous access to information. And we've never had a system that could feed back to us so much information. Nothing's been quite like it. And so it's kind of amazing. And I was reading an article that, of course, one of the things that people are trying to work on is the personality, and that they can figure it out. And what I was thinking just now is they figure it out all mathematically, algorithmically, which tells us something about the basis of number to our personalities and to our living, that we've been very big on language, and they do use language, but the language models are basically mathematics underneath. Everything is algorithmic. And so it's very interesting what we might come to understand about ourselves from these technologies. You know, when cinema reflected back to us a way of seeing that we actually as human beings cannot see, like cinema acts like we can see, or the way television works, these technologies fed back to us something about our own perceptions while it changed our perception, and that's certainly happening now, that we're getting something back to us about the way we function in a way we don't really understand, but is being fed back to us. And you know, I think of the unconscious, because that is what the unconscious has always been, reminding us that we're doing things all the time that we do not understand.
Yep.
And that if we are, that's how we manage, by not understanding, that there's something good about not knowing. And so the relationship of our to this technology and what it's doing to our understanding of not knowing is profound.
Yes. It's this is going to be a little less deep than that. That level of the mathematical unconscious. But I want to.
There is a mathematical unconscious.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
So the mathematical unconscious is one thing we're talking about, but I want to talk about governance, and I want to talk about,
Back
for
to
example, Palestine. All right. And one of the things that an earlier presentation talked about in our division was about live streaming and how much of how we have learned about what's going on in Gaza by the live streaming. But what I want to tell you about that, which I find sort of hopeful, is that live streaming and that feeding and the resharing would not be happening algorithmically if there wasn't something human in us that wanted to know, that wanted to understand and move beyond it. And I take that as some hopefulness. I do think governance is important. We had Social Security databases for decades, and there was never a problem. The fact that we have a Social Security database now isn't the problem. It's what people are doing with it, and it's the people that are doing it.
Of course,
so
right.
I hope what you're taking from this is engaging with technology and engaging with it in terms of governance, in terms of the social, as well as in terms of the clinical
We don't want to
practice.
say, and not just, I think you said something about thinking,
Yeah.
also feeling.
Yeah.
We're going through something about feeling, and that's to the question in the back. The people who are working on trying to make the chat feel more or be more sympathetic is really interesting. I mean, some people would say, "Oh my God, that's so scary," but they're going to try to figure out how we do it because we don't understand how we do it. So it's interesting.
And we could have a whole conversation about how that is built on this idea that there is one cultural, universal, affective
which there is
response, which is the danger of AI. And we're not going to go there because we've run out of time, but we're going to be here. So please, feel free to ask us questions, and thank you for your time. That was fun. You did it. Thank you so much.